Hello everyone, happy Sunday. I hope everyone's having a really good weekend. I just wanted to kind of pop on quickly before everyone starts making dinner and concluding their weekend. Hopefully everyone's getting a lot of rest because, well, next weekend is the weekend before Christmas and it's gonna get crazy. Okay, today's lesson is really all about the shadow self, emerging our dark and our light. Now, this has been pivotal for me this year. I think for years I understood what the shadow self was. I understood what my dark parts were. I acknowledged them. I learned when they kind of stepped forward and when they showed up in certain areas of my life. But the missing piece for me for such a long time was like, how do I integrate them into my light? How do I love them? And so it's been quite a journey that I won't get into now, but I'll kind of start like this. Everybody in the entire world has a dark part and a light part, if we just want to kind of break it down. You know, that you can look up parts theory and shadow self, and there's all these different kind of ideas, but this is what I've come to understand. The dark part of us are the parts of us that we're shameful about, the parts of us that we feel bad about. I mean, our whole entire society is always like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What's your dark? What's your light, basically? Those dark parts are kind of born from pain, just to sum it up, whether that pain is grief, loss, trauma, whatever the case may be, but those parts are bred in pain. So they're the parts of us that we don't really tell a lot of people about, the parts of us that show up within our intimate relationships behind closed doors, the parts of us that maybe we don't even share with anyone, just ourselves, the parts that we really desperately, if we could fix or change or something, those are the dark, shadowy parts of us. We shove them to the corner. And then we have our light. Our light is like, all the parts that we like about ourselves, the parts that we were, that integrated into who we are because we were told by teachers or society or family or friends that oh wow, we're really thoughtful and, we're really creative and really, really strong and brave, and all the parts of us that we like, the emotional parts, the physical parts, the spiritual parts, the way we move about in the world, all of that we do like. There's certain things that we do. So what I have come to learn, and for a long time, I thought I just needed to heal these dark parts, heal them, push them away, let them go, release them from me. But I've learned that every person who incarnates to earth is made up of both parts. They're one side of the same coin. You can do your best. That's where addiction kind of comes in. Any type of addiction, shopping, food, drugs, alcohol, sex, anything. Addiction is that place of, trying to kind of numb out and fill something. And so really, I thought, for a long time, I think like a lot of us, we numb those parts out, but I thought I just need to just deal with them and then they can go. What I have learned through a lot of teachings, and I watch a lot of Andrew Martin videos, and Matt Kahn and Lee Harris, and through all this and through my own education, I've come to understand that they're one and the same coin, same side, two sides of the same coin. Oh my gosh, I need some coffee. But essentially, the whole point, and especially 2019, which I think a few astrologers and people that I follow called it the shadow year. This is the year, and I think everyone can agree, all those dark parts of us, the parts that we really don't like, the depressed, the anxiety, the pain, the trauma, the loss, the anger, the rage, the complete checkout, all those parts of us step forward so loudly and so proudly this year with the only purpose to get our attention so that we can actually stop and listen to them. I always think of it, envision like a very long, what are those things? Like a big meeting table, conference table. Thank you, brain. And basically you are you, whatever age, and you're starting to welcome all these parts of you to the table. The truth is those parts aren't out to get you. Those parts aren't anything other than pain dressed as rage, pain dressed as depression. whatever it may be for you. And our only job really this year has been to listen and to watch when they come up, and why are they here? They have a story, and more times than not, they're parts of us that whatever those experiences happened at. And I can share, my dad left when I was about 3 months old, and so through lots of counseling and through years and understanding, I was able to really actually go back to that little baby, that 3-month-old part of me, and that was the birth of rejection for me. And we don't think that a baby can understand, but she did, and her world changed, right? Within her home, what that looked like, how it impacted the mother, all of these kind of things. But that was the birth of that wound, of that rejection. Now that wound and rejection has shown up my entire life. When friends didn't like me, trying to people please, or feeling like I was rejected, or someone had confrontation with me, feeling like, oh, I'm being rejected, who I am as being rejected. It played a huge role with our daughter when we adopted her. She went through her own trauma and her own pain and all of these little experiences, and she didn't know how to connect and to attach and to be open to love and safety. And so for a long time, that triggered my rejection part of me. And so that stepped forward, and then there's the behavior that comes after that wound once it shows up, right? And so I had to really realize that in those moments, that this wound, that 3-month-old self, that rejection piece was really open, like stepping forward and hijacking who I am. It was really kind of leading the way. And it took a long time to get there. And that rejection piece, I mean, I can go on to the other parts of me, the other not so pretty parts of me, but it was really hard at many points in my life to love those parts of me. I did not love them. I wished them away. They were the parts that I didn't like. And I was not proud of a lot of the parts, the ugly that had stepped forward. And I think a lot of moms can contest that there is nothing worse than the rage or anger that comes up being a mom. It's like nothing you've experienced before. And so those were the ugly parts of me. And so I think the beauty of understanding this is to have an opportunity, the gift you give yourself to really start. And it could be supported through counseling, EMDR is really great. Any counselor or person in your life that you can confide in that has this understanding, especially if you're coming from more heavily, your background would be more trauma-based, I would definitely, encourage people to step forward. But a lot of this work you can do for yourself. We're the expert of our own life. Who knows is better than we do. So really kind of inviting those parts and just paying attention to how they come up. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to love those parts. I wouldn't let some of those parts off the hook. To me, it was like too shameful. I couldn't forgive them, like too dark, too heavy, too much. But again, going back to the idea that coming here as a human is specifically to feel. Just to feel. And we spend most of our life trying not to feel. And in doing that, and also our brain protects us. But throughout the journey, there are parts of my brain, there are parts of my body that locked away memories, that locked away painful things. And now that I was at a place that they were really starting to show up, it was like, okay, it's time for them to step forward. They're on the stage, and I'm here being like, what do you have to show me? What story do you have to tell? What is your origin? What pain were you born from? And now I get to parent that part of me. And that part of me never was parented in ways. Those are my experiences. But I mean, those parts of me, I got to finally show up for. And there are a lot of lessons that kind of follow that. Is like, wow, I am all that I've ever really needed. Once you can get there, when you realize that, I love this quote, and I'll attach it down below. Matt Kahn said it. It's like this idea that once we get to a point in life, we realize that we externalized looking for validation and for understanding from all these other people. But when we really show up and listen to these parts of ourselves that are within our cell body, we realize that we were the only ones who could ever really heal them. We're the only ones who knew exactly what to say and how to listen. So now, a lot of those parts of me, maybe they still show up. And maybe my behavior and pattern is still, within work is when they show up. But it's about recognizing when they show up, acknowledging that they're here, listening to them, loving on them because they were born in pain, and really being aware of when they're hijacking, when they're showing up, because it's almost like we start to vibrate up here and we're not really checked into, whoa, what's happening for me? Parenting, I think is really easy to do that. There'll be times you'll in this control battle with your child, and then you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so now I've been able to step back and look and be like, my 10-year-old self was completely running the show there, just locked in that because, you know, my experiences when I was 10 and what wound was kind of coming up. And now I'm like, I can stand back and be like, okay, my 32-year-old self can enter, and I can really kind of take care of that in a real different way while loving, you know, that 10-year-old self, because, you know, she, there was a reason she came forward. So anyways, now I integrate that into my light. So my dark is very much as a part of my light. They can't be separated. It is all of who I am. So again, going back to that framework of everything is all here to help us, because our only journey is to get back to self. You know, we were birthed from, you know, the greatest essence and energy and love and beauty and divine consciousness and all of that. And then we, you know, years and years and years of losing all of that, only to realize that we had it all within us the whole time. And so anyways, I think it's really great because it's empowering, and it really gives a narrative to the dark places that we can sometimes really get in. And again, going back to other videos of really appreciating those dark times, you know, those are your dark parts. Those are your wounds stepping forward and really wanting to a voice. And then again, going back to the very first video of immediacy, when we get locked in these places, and it could be weeks or months, or you know, something keeps happening and the same feeling or same wound keeps coming up, there's that sense of immediacy to push it away like I did, or numb it out, or whatever. You just weren't ready to kind of deal with it. But I think it's beautiful, because I think the more we resist, the more it keeps coming forward, the more it keeps wanting a voice. And so I think the closer we can get within us and really loving on those parts and really allowing them to kind of take stage, they start releasing in a way, you know? So I think that was my biggest lesson, is really how to really love myself. It kind of takes self-compassion and self-love to like a whole new level. And that's always been my goal, is to find peace within me and who I am and the choices I've made and the mistakes I've made and the behavior that comes forward and those dark, ugly parts of me. I just wanted peace. And I think I wanted that for years and years and years. I just never knew how to get there. And it all shows up in the right time. I mean, some people who are reading this, you might not be at that place where you can really start to look at and love those parts of you. I mean, I never was for a really long time. But anyways, it's totally possible. And trust me, if you were in my head and in my dark, ugly parts over the last few decades, you would have thought, oh wow, like how could she ever really forgive and love and let go of the shame and all that? But it's totally possible. So get to know those parts of yourself, those parts of you that you haven't got to know, that you have put in the corner for years. Maybe those parts show up in your marriage. Maybe they show up in, you know, your life and your career and your work and your parenting and just being alone with self. You know, really listen to them. And it's not comfortable. It's not beautiful, you know. Those ugly parts are there for a reason, and going back to those places isn't comfortable. But get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it is the key. It is your solution to finding peace. It is the pathway. Anyways, so that concludes lesson 4, and yeah, we'll dive into lesson 5 tomorrow. I hope you guys had a great weekend, and I hope you enjoy the week. Action plan can just be if you wanted to. If you feel like your experiences aren't too heavy that you would need assistance like counseling, then I encourage you to, one thing you can do is you can have bath, Epsom salt bath, essential oils, relax, light a candle, and just whatever you're dealing with, allow to step forward. Think about, when was the first time I experienced this feeling, whatever I'm sitting with? And allow those parts of you to come forward. Your 4-year-old self might. Let your brain kind of go and just let it guide. And you might have specific memories you want to go back to that, you know, kind of show up and impact your life. You might have great awareness around that. Call them in, bring them into that space with you. Remember your 7-year-old self or your 20-year-old self, and really listen to her and show up for her and mother her or father her. Show up for those parts of you. You can do it via bath. Another one is, I like to kind of get visual. You can do circles, and whatever comes to your head, write a word in each wound. Like one of mine was rejection. You know, just starting the process of kind of getting to know them. And as the best thing you can do is, even if you don't understand them, and even if you can't put words or a voice or an age or a whatever to them, just practice self-compassion and love. because they were born from pain. And if you think of your best friend who maybe had a traumatic experience when she was 13 or 19 or whatever, when you look at her and you see those parts step forward within your relationships, and you look back and you be like, oh wow, like I get that. I love her because she survived and she went through all this, and you know, what pain. You have such compassion. We're so quick to do it for other people, but we don't do it for ourselves. So anyways, this video has gone over 10 more minutes than I wanted to, but thanks for sticking through and have a good week. Bye.